What is going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Wednesday Football Talk Show here with Ben Hall and my guy Trey Watson. Last week we kind of took a week off. We had a small interview with Jeremiah Hadel. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. But yeah, we're back this week. We're talking more football. A lot is going on in the college football world with National Signing Day today. Maryland's getting some guys. Maryland's looking really good there. And we're also talking about Maryland football just as a whole. They've been dealing with COVID a lot and it's been affecting them. Before we get into this, how you doing today, Trey?
Doing good, man. Like you said, it's been a while. Just been working through some things privately and, as well as just in the football world in general. So definitely a lot to talk about, a lot going on right now as kind of football in general. The season is coming to, I guess a boiling point right now.
So for our first game, the Patriots-Rams game, this was a pretty one-sided game. The Rams are really starting to take off right now and playing really good football. The big thing in this game was Cam Akers and the Rams defense. Cam Akers really stepped it up. He had 171 rushing yards, and it just seemed like every time they gave him the ball, nobody was stopping him. He was busting off 10-yard carries just to start the game, 20-yard carries to start the game, and that kind of set the point for the rest of the game. But for the Patriots on offense, they just struggled. They couldn't really do anything against the Rams defense, which is understandable given the talent the Rams have on that defense. They made a bunch of plays. They had a defensive touchdown, Kenny Young. So overall, I just think the Rams are a really, really good football team, and they're playing good football when they need to.
Yeah, man, I think so too. I think, the Rams looked extremely polished, and them getting a different running back going in Cam Akers, I kind of had been waiting on him to get to that point really all season. I thought he could be a breakout guy for him. And he looked like it this week, and they really just thoroughly dominated the Patriots. I think early the Patriots got away from what, they were really used to doing. They got shut down at the goal line, trying to run those quarterback run plays. And then on top of that, the pick six on the screenplay kind of just set them back, and they're not in the position this year to be overcoming big deficits, especially against what is a really strong Rams defense. And, they've looked better and better each week, it really feels like.
For our next game, the Bears-Texans game, the Bears had a huge win. I guess it was good for them to get that win. But first and foremost, before we even talk about the whole game, Deshaun Watson needs help. The Texans are going to get him killed out there. To me, he's one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL right now. He has so much talent. He just has no help. Like a lot of teams complain, but I think Watson, when he had Will Fuller and some other guys, he had some talent, but the offensive line doesn't do well. They don't have a first round pick. They traded away the best wide receiver in the NFL. The Texans really just they need to do something to save Deshaun Watson. But for the game, Mitch Trubisky had 3 touchdowns and 267 yards, which is pretty insane. He hasn't really played well all year. He hasn't even been the starting quarterback all year. But he had a great game. The Bears defense played really well. And Allen Robinson just continues to show he's a top wide receiver in the NFL. And I still want the Ravens to go get him this offseason, but they're going to have to pay a little bit more just by the way he's played. And also David Montgomery for the Bears is really starting to step up right now. We've continued to say the Bears really are not a great football team, but they played all right lately, and David Montgomery has been playing really well. So it was a good win for the Bears, but there's still no possible chance they'll make the playoffs.
Yeah, man, I think, for the Texans, it's just they're in such a tough position, and especially Deshaun. A guy that talented who produces that well basically anytime, he wants to. For him to do that much with that little that he's done so far this year alone is impressive, and it's just hard to watch, man. Like you said, the O-line is tough, and they've invested picks and a lot of money in the Tunsil in there, and it just really hasn't translated yet. They have some, older veterans who really just aren't producing at running back, and then really nothing at receiver or tight end that's worth mentioning. So they're just in a tough position. I saw on Twitter a couple minutes ago that Louis Riddick is going to interview for their GM position today. I think he'd be a solid guy to get in there. He seems, really well, versed in terms of his, scouting abilities and those things like that. But I don't really think it matters who they get there in terms of just being able to turn it around quick. It's just not going to happen. For the Bears, though, man, they've looked better. They've always had some good pieces on defense, more so than offense. And, Khalil Mack took over that game early on, made a lot of, game-changing plays. And when Trubisky doesn't lose the game, they have a chance. Like you said, the running game got going in Montgomery. Allen Robinson is a great receiver. So, when they're able to get him the ball, good things happen. And it doesn't help when you're playing against the Texans too.
So for our next game, the Cowboys Bengals, Andy Dalton got a win against his former team, which was good for him. But this game was kind of a difficult game to watch. I watched Red Zone, so I wasn't watching this full game. But I mean, the Cowboys hadn't won a game by more than 3 points all year, and they beat the Bengals by 23, which to me is expected without Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is the future of the Bengals, and they have a lot of good pieces at wide receiver, but the quarterback's just not there right now just because Burrow's out. And also they need to fix that offensive line. Now in the future, I think the AFC North will be one of the best divisions in all of football. The NFC West right now definitely has it, but I just think the Bengals could be very good in a few years. If they add to that offensive line with Joe Burrow playing quarterback, that's going to be dangerous. They have some weapons. T. Higgins. I don't think A.J. Green will be there after this year, but Tyler Boyd. So they got some weapons. They just are really struggling right now with a backup quarterback. But for the Cowboys, it was a good win. They're still competing for a division spot in the NFC East, but I don't see them winning it with as well as Washington's played and the way that the Eagles have played since Jalen Hurts has become quarterback. So, the Cowboys are still fighting around. It was a good win for them, but I just don't see them making the playoffs now.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it'd be good for them to not make it. Like that win hurt them in terms of, draft position. And realistically, there's nothing that, they're going to gain from trying to win that division championship, and they're just not going to win it, in my opinion. So, it was probably good for some of the players' confidence to get a win and to get a convincing win. It helps when Cincinnati turns the ball over 3 straight times to start the game. Especially for a defense that has been playing as bad as the Cowboys defense had played. That probably just gave them a spark. And against a really bad team, a lead like that is just insurmountable. Andy Dalton made a couple plays. It was like kind of a big deal for him since that's the team that let him go. I don't know if there's a whole lot of revenge there just because Andy Dalton got let go because he wasn't playing good anymore. So, there's that. But, it might have been good for them emotionally. But, at the end of the day, that game just didn't really have a whole lot of significance besides the draft position change.
Yeah, so for our next game, the Dolphins-Chiefs, the Chiefs scored 28 unanswered points, I think, and the Chiefs really turned it on late. But my biggest takeaway from this game was the Dolphins' heart. Last year, they didn't really have much the defense was pretty good, but on either side of the ball, they didn't really have much. And Coach Flores got them some wins that was just impressive. Then this year, they play a Chiefs team who's the best team in the NFL. I don't even think it's arguably anymore after all the Steelers losses, but they play the best team in the NFL. They go up big early. Defense is forcing turnovers on Mahomes, so it only threw 1 pick before this game. And then the Chiefs come back, take a big lead, and the Dolphins fight right back. So to me, it's really impressive what Flores has done in Miami. I think he's a great coach, and it really impresses me with what he's done overall with this team. He put Tua in there. Tua played great. I wouldn't say great. He played his best game as he has with the Dolphins. But for the Chiefs, it was no surprise. Patrick Mahomes. It was a little bit of a surprise. Patrick Mahomes throwing 3 picks, but Tyreek Hill got involved more. Travis Kelce had a big day, and when you get those two involved, you're not going to lose any games, as we saw. But like I said, Mahomes, other than the 3 picks, played really well. He made some great throws. And also for the Dolphins, before the season, they traded for Lynn Bowden, who was the quarterback at Kentucky and then switched to kind of like a speed guy and was playing running back / wideout. And the Dolphins really got him involved. And, they, with some injuries, they really haven't had too many pieces on that receiving core. So it was good to see the Dolphins get him involved. But like I said, I think the Dolphins, I think they're going to make the playoffs. Coming from last year, I bet you a lot of people did not see them getting into the playoffs this year, but they really impressed me on Sunday. And I thought it was a great game by them, even though they lost by 6 points.
Yeah, I think given the circumstances and who they were playing against, there's a lot to gain from that game. They didn't have Devontae Parker and a couple other weapons, and then Mike Gesicki, who's been their top guy the last couple of weeks. He went down during the game, so they were without a ton on offense. Their top 3 running backs and Kyle Van Noy on defense. That's a lot, going against you. But they took advantage of some tips early, got those 2 interceptions, and then Xavier Howard made the play late against Tyreek Hill. And they showed that they have a lot of playmaking ability, and they have potential to compete in big games, which is what they'll need. They need to finish strong down the stretch, and then going into the playoffs to try and make something happen. I think for the Chiefs, man, you didn't expect those plays from Mahomes, but again, the first two were tipped. So those kind of things happen, and they're not really that big of a deal when you consider it's Patrick Mahomes. And he turns around and throws for 400 yards and does all the things, that you expect him to do. For them, one thing they want to do, especially going into the playoffs, I don't think they want a repeat of last year where they kept going down. They were down 24 points, I think, to Houston, down 10 late to the 49ers in the Super Bowl. You don't want to put yourself in those positions, but clearly they're the best by far team maybe ever at coming back from those situations without, barely even sweating. So at the end of the day, they're still the most potent offense by far and the most well-rounded team, and no one wants to play them, even if they are able to get a lead early.
And even with those leads, like watching the 49ers game in the Super Bowl, once the Chiefs went down by however many they went down, it was like the game's over. The Chiefs aren't going to win. And all of a sudden, that Chiefs offense turns up, the defense makes a few plays, and they win the game. And it was just like that in the Texans game, except the Texans game was even more scary just because the way they came back like so quickly and won so easily. But for our next game, the Cardinals Giants, after the Seattle Seahawks game, I thought the Giants would be more competitive with the Cardinals. I didn't think they'd win, but I thought it would be a little bit more competitive. But the Cardinals play really well on defense. The Giants got Daniel Jones back, and that didn't help at all. They couldn't really get anything going in the passing game or the run game. Wayne Gallman did a little bit, but didn't do near enough. But for the Cardinals on offense, I think the big thing is getting DeAndre Hopkins more involved. As I said earlier, I think he's the best receiver in football, and you have to get him a lot of targets to win games. I was looking, and they've lost a few games where they've thrown the ball to him a lot, but in most of their losses, he's had less than 10 targets. And I just think you have to get him the ball if you want to win games, especially given the fact that you guys are on the board of making the playoffs right now. And if you lose another game, it's not looking like you're going to make it. So getting your best player and the whole team involved is needed. But since earlier in the year, Kyler Murray has struggled, I think overall, he hasn't played as well as everybody was thinking. But, the crazy thing from this game was Reddick on the Cardinals defense with 5 sacks and 3 forced fumbles. That's just an incredible stat line. And that was a needed win for them against the NFC East opponent in the Giants.
Yeah, man, I think, for one side, for the Cardinals, it was exactly what they needed after a couple game slump. And for the Giants, it was the exact opposite. They were coming off a big win and put themselves in a position to potentially, win that division. And they folded and didn't play very well. Daniel Jones played what looked like hurt, and it hurt his team. And they just, didn't do enough. Obviously, giving up 5 sacks to one guy anytime is unacceptable. And I know Andrew Thomas, that first round, tackle for them, had kind of struggled all year, but it hadn't gotten that bad. And, guy was able to set a franchise record on him. So that's not a memory you want to have, especially as a young player, because it could stick with you. And it definitely hurts the Giants' chances because the Redskins on the other side are looking really good right now.
So now for our next game, the Vikings versus the Bucs. The Bucs got a good win, but I thought the Vikings could have done a lot more. Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson have been one of the best duos at wide receiver this year, and Jefferson's still in his first year. And they didn't really get the ball to those two enough. Dalvin Cook had a pretty good game, but when you have two guys like that in your passing game, you need Kirk Cousins to get them the ball because they make plays. Every time they throw it to them, they typically make plays. They don't drop the ball a lot. And like I said, Jefferson's the best rookie wide receiver right now. Coming into the draft, a lot of people had him listed at 4 or 5, and he's proven that he is the best rookie wide receiver right now. And, it probably helps a little bit that Thielen's there with him. But even if you look in other places, Dallas, CeeDee Lamb was one of the top receivers off the board. He's got good receivers around him. And Jefferson's still making plays. So, like I said, I think for the Vikings, you got to get those guys involved a little bit more. But for the Buccaneers, it was a good win. It wasn't too difficult for them throughout the whole game. It's a tough to see Ronald Jones get hurt. I saw he's getting a pin or something put in his finger, and he might be out this week. So that's definitely not a good thing for them. But if he goes down, I guess Leonard Fournette will take over most of the carries. and they'll get McCoy in there a little bit as well. But Brady played pretty well, and overall, like I said, I just thought it was a pretty easy win for the Buccaneers.
Yeah, man, I think, watching that game and seeing what happened, I think the kicking was a huge part of it. But overall, the Bucs did the things they needed to do to win. But I thought the Vikings lost that game more so than the Bucs really won it. The Bucs made a couple downfield throws. There was one to Scotty Miller early that was big. But Tom Brady still is struggling overall to throw the ball down the field more really than like 10, 15 yards. He missed a couple wide open guys. I mean, they probably could have had 2 touchdowns on their first drive to Gronk and then on a post route to Chris Godwin. But, their defense did enough, stepped up when they needed to. It probably helped, like you said, that Thielen and Jefferson weren't targeted maybe as much as you expected the way that the Bucs secondary has played recently. But their run defense stepped up and did enough to slow down Dalvin Cook when they needed to. And then, the kicker missing extra points and field goals left and right. You should definitely win games like that.
So for our next game, the Broncos Panthers, this game was kind of similar to what you said earlier with the Bengals Cowboys, where you're kind of a win here doesn't help you. Neither team has a chance at making the playoffs, and you're only getting a better draft pick with a loss. But both teams played to win, and it was a great game. Well, or they played to lose. It was such a close game. Drew Lock had a career high 4 passing touchdowns, and coming into this year, I was really high on him, and he had really let me down, but he played pretty well on Sunday against the Panthers defense. I thought the Panthers played pretty well. They were without DJ Moore, which really hurts them in the passing game, but Teddy Bridgewater still got it done. He made some good throws, didn't have any passing touchdowns, but had a lot of yards, and Mike Davis had 2 rushing touchdowns. So their offense really didn't look too bad, but they just couldn't get the win, and it's probably great for them to not get the win because now they're sitting at 4-9 and have a better pick than they would if they would have won this game. But just like I said, I just thought neither team really was winning anything from this game, but it was good to see Drew Lock play pretty well in this game.
Yeah, man, I think, the Broncos' young weapons around Drew Lock have stepped up. The running backs have kind of been more consistent as the season's gone on. But Judy looks more and more comfortable. So does KJ Hamler. And then they've got, multiple tight ends. A lot of those guys have been hurt left and right. I know Fans had a couple little small injuries. But they have playmakers, man. And some of their O-line draft picks from the last couple of years are playing better. I know Bowles just signed a big deal after they had declined his option. So that's good to see for their future. Next year they'll get Von Miller back and Chubb's playing really well. So their future doesn't look too bad right now. And honestly, the Panthers doesn't either. Obviously, they've been without McCaffrey all year. But their weapons on offense are looking solid, besides not having him at running back. They've got 2 really good starting receivers. Down the line, they could probably figure out what they're going to do. Obviously, they have Chin on defense, who's looking great as well. Really young player. Jermaine Carter's getting more starts, and he's making some plays. So they're finding out, guys that they have that maybe they didn't have prior to this season, and they're building up what they need. So it'll be interesting to see what both of those teams can do moving forward. But like you said, this game right now just doesn't have a lot of significance for this season.
And before we move on to the next game, speaking of Jermaine Carter made a great play in that game, and the refs called unsportsmanlike conduct on him after he got up and stood over the dude he hit. I just want to say that the refs need to stop making this game about them. Jermaine Carter made a good play and looked at the dude. He didn't do anything utterly disrespectful and still got 15 yards for it, which could have had a point in this game because I think that gave him a first down. They ended up scoring a touchdown on that. So I just hate the fact that the refs call little stuff like that, and I think it really has hurt this game as a whole.
Yeah, man. I mean, that stuff's lame to see. You play this game and you play with so much emotion. I mean, he lit up a grown man, destroyed him basically. Like, you can't expect someone not to be excited. And all he did was flex on him a little bit, stand over him. I mean, that stuff happens all the time. It's been happening, the entire history of the game. Refs just make things definitely a little too personal, like you said, and make the game about themselves, which is just – they need to get rid of that, man. Like, they finally are letting guys do celebrations after touchdowns. I mean, what do you think is going to happen when you make a good play that's not a touchdown? It's the same thing.
Exactly. But for our next game, the Titans-Jaguars, this game was Derrick Henry, and that's really it. He had 200-plus rushing yards, and 2+ touchdowns for the 4th time in his career. And I think he's done it twice against the Jaguars. But he just destroyed them. They couldn't stop him, which is expected. The Jaguars defense is really young, and they'll be good in the future, but they're still young now. But Derrick Henry this is his time of year every single year. The Titans are playing really good football. They beat them by 21, which is a good win. And it's also probably a good loss for the Jaguars, who, if the Jets win a game and the Jaguars lose out, I think we'll have the first pick. I don't think the Jets will win a game, especially after what happened. We didn't get to talk about it against the Raiders, where you blitz everybody on a Hail Mary. But like I said, I just think the Jaguars weren't going to win this game no matter what. They put in Gardner Minshew late, and he played pretty well, and they announced he's going to be a starting quarterback. So I guess for the rest of the year, but after this year, I think it's either going to be Fields or Trevor Lawrence who's going to be the quarterback for them. And also for the Titans, A.J. Brown had a big day. He's been one of the best wide receivers from that class the year he was drafted, and he wasn't the top guy taken, I don't believe. So it's really good for the Titans right now with the way they're playing. We're kind of seeing some similarities to last year, except this year, it's not even a question whether they'll get into the playoffs. I mean, if they lose out, they won't, but I don't think there's any chance they lose out, and they'll definitely be a team to beat in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Titans look really good. Like we discussed a couple of weeks ago, Derrick Henry gets stronger as the season goes on, and that's exactly what we're seeing. And like you said, A.J. Brown's making a lot of plays. I know he had an injury in that game too, but he had the crazy one-handed catch. And he's been dominant the last 2 years for sure. DK's coming on this year, but I think just the last 2 years of consistency, A.J. Brown has looked really good, and that's been a really good pick for him. As far as the Jags, man, they're going back and forth with the quarterbacks. Minshew's going to get another start this week, and they continue just to have that carousel keep going at the quarterback position. And then, their running back looks really good, man. I think, they hit on James Robinson, and he's played really well. He had that crazy touchdown get called back where his shirt got stretched like 10 yards. But, I mean, he looks good, man, and he's doing that with, just a really bad team around him. So, if they get a couple more pieces and figure things out, they might, slowly be able to build that team back up. It's hard to believe that, just a couple of years ago, they were, really a couple plays away from going to a Super Bowl maybe. But that team is far along and gone now, and they've got to figure out what their next steps are.
So for our next game, the Colts Raiders, the Colts really dominated this one. I think it was a closer game than the score actually showed. For a while, it was actually a pretty close game. But for the Raiders, I think they got to get Henry Ruggs involved more. That was the first wide receiver taken off the board. And I think if you're going to use him as the first taken wide receiver, I didn't think he was the best receiver in the draft, but Henry Ruggs is a great player. And I think they could be getting a lot more out of him than they actually have. But I think they got to get him involved way more. We see a lot of deep balls thrown to him, and some big plays like that. But other than that, we really don't see him making any plays or them throwing him the ball there. But Aguilar and Carr played pretty well together. Aguilar had a big day. But just on the other side of the ball for the Colts looked really good. We saw probably the interception of the year in the end zone on a pass to Darren Waller with the Colts defense. Jonathan Taylor had a huge day. Phillip Rivers played well. And T.Y. Hilton has really came along at this point in the season. The past 2 weeks, he's been really, really good. And I think that's big for them, where now they got to win. I think they got to win at least 2 of the 3 games to make the playoffs, because that AFC playoff race is getting very, very tight. And a win against the Raiders there was huge for them. And the way they did it was even more important, with winning by like 17 points, I think. So, yeah, like I said, I think the Colts needed that win, but the Raiders now are probably going to be pushed out of the playoffs because they couldn't pull that one out.
Yeah, man, I think the last couple of weeks, even with the Jets game, the Raiders just have, been underwhelming since the loss to the Chiefs. That might have taken a little steam out of them, but they just haven't looked like the same team. They've got a really solid core of weapons on offense, like you said, with Ruggs. Aguilar's played so well this year, Waller, and then Josh Jacobs at running back. They have the potential to be really good. Their defense has, had some bad performances recently. This one, might be one of those. But the Colts have stepped it up. I agree. The biggest thing lately for them has been T.Y. Hilton coming back to life. That's huge because, we all know how dominant he can be when he's, at his peak. That's big, given a number one threat back to Phillip Rivers, and then that their running game getting going and their defense is so solid and makes a lot of big plays. They're definitely a team to watch. So we'll see if they can pull it out because, like you said, it's just a lot of really competitive teams in the AFC, and those wild card spots are going to be extremely tight races. But I think the Colts are definitely one to watch, and if they get into the playoffs, teams won't be wanting to play them.
And before we move on, I also want to state, since I've said that the Raiders were the team to beat in the AFC, they've lost 3 of their last 4 games. So it's made me look really bad. But I guess I was just confused. They played some good games. They also beat the Chiefs. So I think the Raiders got some talent, as you said, and I think they'll be good in the next few years. But for our next game, the Seahawks Jets, this was a needed win by the Seahawks coming off a loss to the Giants last week. I don't think we expected anything else just because the Jets are the Jets. I don't know how else to explain it. The Jets in the future, they've got some good pieces. Ty Johnson, Maryland, has been playing really, really well for them. And it's been since we've saying he needs more carries. When a guy does good things with the ball, I don't know why you don't get him the ball. But overall, I think they're going to have the number 1 pick unless somehow or for some reason they win a game. And I also saw Sam Darnold said he wants to stay a Jet for life. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not sure what's going to happen there. I really have no idea, but I think they're going to be getting a different quarterback to play there. But for the Seahawks, they always play good against less teams, which I thought they didn't play good against the Giants, but they played really good against the Jets. Russell Wilson played pretty well, and this is a big game coming into next week for them. I believe I think they could win. They're gonna win, but I just don't know with the way the Washington football team has been playing and the way the Seahawks have been kind of underperforming. I think that game is the game of the week. And the Seahawks need that win with the way that the Rams caught them in their division and the way they've been playing. They really have more talent than what they've produced. I just don't think that they've played as well as they should be. And also, this is also coming after we all said Russ was the MVP. I didn't even think it was a question, but now as the seasons went on, starting to get closer, I think Aaron Rodgers might be catching him. But yeah, like I said, it was a good win for the Seahawks, and they got a big game coming up this week.
Yeah, man, if there's any team you want to rebound against after a tough loss, it's the Jets. So it worked out perfectly for them. They got what they needed. And now, like you said, it's time to push down that final stretch. About that Sam Darnold comment, man, unless he's content with being a backup Jet for life, I just don't see it happening. It's just not realistic, man. I mean, that franchise needs an overhaul, and those things always start with a quarterback. Number 1 picks, 99% of the time, especially when you have Trevor Lawrence coming out, they go to quarterback. So that one's about as foregone as you can get. And we'll see what can happen with the Seahawks if they can get back to the form they had early in the season.
So for our next game, the Packers-Lions, this one was closer than I thought it would be. The Lions have shown 2 different teams all year, and this was the good Lions. They competed. They're also doing this without Kenny Galladay, who has been great when he's been healthy. But for the Packers, Aaron Rodgers has played so well lately, and I think it's really helped with what Davante Adams has done for him. Rodgers is a top 2 quarterback in the NFL right now, and Davante Adams has really helped that. Davante Adams makes so many plays, and I think this was his 6th or 7th straight game with a touchdown, which is just incredible. Tanyan's played good. Valdez-Scantling, other than the 1 fumble a few weeks ago, has played really well. And overall, I think they're starting to come together fully. They're 10-3, one of the best teams in the NFC. And they're also getting Lazard. Lazard, I think this was his 2nd week back. And before he got hurt earlier in the year, he was playing great. So I think the Packers are one of the top teams in the NFC, if not the best. And going down the road, I think we could see them in the conference championship or maybe even the Super Bowl.
Yeah, man, I think the Packers, every week they really just built up and they look great as of late. There's really nothing they can do wrong right now, honestly. Aaron Rodgers is doing whatever he wants. Like you said, Davante Adams is the number 1. And they certainly took advantage of a Lions team who's struggling. So, it's been a tough year for them, kind of really ever since the very first game when they blew that lead against the Bears. But, Packers are in prime position with the Saints losing that game to the Eagles. that number one spot and that bye is probably going to be theirs. I don't see them. I don't know the rest of their schedule all the way, but I could easily see them winning out and taking that number one spot and being in prime position to, carry the Super Bowl, at least NFC wise, through Green Bay.
For our next game, the Saints-Eagles, the Eagles look like a completely different team with Jalen Hurts at quarterback. I think coming out of college, there were some people who were doubting him, I guess. I just don't see how you can do it. In college, the man was great no matter where he was. And the big thing about him is he's a leader. I tweeted out during the game, I expected him to give that team a spark. I didn't expect them to go out and beat the Saints the way they did. But I expected him to give that team a spark. And he really did in the rushing game. Him and Miles Sanders both had 100+ rushing yards. And I think Sanders' is a great running back, don't get me wrong, but I think Sanders' success really helped Jalen Hurts being there because now teams have to take into account that Hurts can run and Sanders can. So they're going to be running more options and they're going to be guessing Hurts more, which will open the hole up for Sanders. So I really like that the Eagles made this move. I said the last time we were on here, I don't think you can knock Wentz until you give him some help, but I understand them benching him. You needed to, especially given the fact that you still have a chance competing for your division. But like I said, I just think this was a really, really tough loss for the Saints. It comes at a really bad time. Taysom Hill had won a few games, but Taysom Hill really struggled. And the game was over earlier. They threw a big touchdown. Hurts had the fumble late, but this game wasn't really close at that point. And they threw a late touchdown, which made the game closer. But throughout most of the game, the Saints have been struggling. So I just think that the Eagles really, really needed that spark that Hurts gave them. And this was a huge win for them. And looking to next week and the weeks after, Hurts is their quarterback.
Yeah, man, I think, for the Eagles, it was, like you said, it was just a spark. It's really no personal knock on Carson Wentz as a quarterback besides the fact that he just hasn't played well lately. So that's tough. And like guys came out in support of him and all that stuff, which, you could say maybe it hurts his feelings a little bit, but at the end of the day, he understands it's a business. Those guys are hurt because they've been around Carson for so long. And, they also understand the team invested $100+ million into that guy. So the team is hurt that he's not working out. Whether or not Jalen Hurts plays well, they still have a problem because, again, they just paid that guy a lot of money. So, that's that at the end of the day. But the loss for the Saints was worse than the win was for the Eagles, even with all that being said. The Saints just can't have that happen where they're at, in their season. They needed that win. Especially because, Taysom Hill's been playing and he had played well for the most part, so it hadn't been an issue. But then you have, Drew Brees, you don't know what's going on with him, and they still really can't figure that out. Who knows? Maybe if they keep struggling, they go to Jameis and figure that out. Try like a 2-quarterback system. That could be an option for them. It'll be interesting to see what they do moving forward, though, because they've got to get back on track. They hadn't given up a 100-yard rusher, I don't think, in a couple of years, and then they give up 2 in the same game to a rookie quarterback who they knew was going to run the ball more often than not. That's what confused me. A lot of reporters were saying that, teams didn't know what the Eagles were going to do. If you have a guy who's a rookie, who's primarily a runner, who you say can't pass very well, I would assume he's going to run a lot. And that's exactly what he did, and it worked very well for him. So, there's no surprise there. But the Saints, they took a loss that they really couldn't afford right now.
Yeah, and as you said, I forgot to even mention, with Winston on the bench, as you said, Hill hasn't been playing bad. I think he even passed for 200 and some yards on Sunday, but I think you should give Winston a shot. I don't. Sean Payton has been doing this much more than I have, and he knows way more than I do about football as a whole. But with what I've seen, I think you should give Jameis Winston a shot and see if maybe that passing game improves a little bit more. And also get Michael Thomas a little bit more involved because last year he was argumentative. He had an argument for the best wide receiver in football. But for our next game, the Chargers-Falcons, like we said earlier, this is another pick game. The loser gets a better pick than the winner does. They're both now 4-9. but both of these teams have had a lot of issues winning games late. They've competed with a lot of teams and just can't pull wins out. And the Chargers pulled this one out. The Chargers have a good future. We both stated on here that we don't think Anthony Lynn, I don't think Anthony Lynn should have been getting the slander that he had. But watching this week, it was tough. The one time they didn't get points at the end of the half, that was bad. We've seen a lot of teams with it, so I'm not really gonna like I said, I like Anthony Lynn, but that was tough to see, especially given the fact that you need to score points there, and with a lot of people they're saying he's on the hot seat. However, Herbert looked pretty good. Herbert all year has played well. He threw for 243 yards and 2 touchdowns. For the Falcons, they got Calvin Ridley involved more, which was needed. Julio was out, so when Julio goes out, you have to get Ridley involved more, which they did, but they still got the loss, which probably was good for them. But Bagley made a game-winning field goal as time expired, which was big. He's been, no disrespect to him, but he's been horrible this year. He's missed a ton of kicks, and, he came in clutch at the end of the game when they needed him to, but that win really wasn't good for them. They got to win, and no win in the NFL is terrible, but it probably would have been better just take the loss and get a better pick. But yeah, like I said, that game was, like I said, just who could get the better pick.
Man, I think, that game, I didn't watch a ton of it, but I think what I did see was tough to see. Everyone was talking about Matt Ryan throwing the pick late. Like you said, the clip of them not getting the field goal off for the Chargers before the half, they were just so indecisive. I think it just showed that game more than anything, just showed problems that are, going on with both of those franchises right now. They're just not in the best position. It's been tough for the Chargers more so with the injuries than anything else. They started off the year, with just injury after injury, the craziness with Tyrod Taylor and the getting poked in the chest and all that. It's just been a crazy year for them, man. And you can't really imagine a lot of that stuff happening and then being in that position at the end of the day. The Falcons situation has been just as tough, and they've, just haven't been able to take advantage really in any of the games. That's just where they're both at right now as franchises.
For our next game, the Washington football team versus 49ers. This game was impressive. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but the Washington football team defense is one of the best in the NFL.
Yeah.
The Washington football team's defense is crazy to me right now. The way they are playing, they played against Nick Mullins, who isn't the best quarterback, but anybody who watched that game cannot sit there and say that Washington football defense is not one of the top in the NFL. Chase Young, I think he just has to be the defensive rookie of the year. His stat line was 6 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, 2 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, and 1 touchdown. We don't typically ever see rookies with that kind of stat line, but Chase Young is different, and that's the reason he was a second overall pick in the NFL draft. But yeah, like I said, the 49ers, even though Mullins, like I said, was playing quarterback, the 49ers hadn't been playing bad football right now. Brandon Ayuk had a good game. He had 119 yards. But just this week, like I said earlier, that Seahawks-Washington football team game is going to be a great one. The Washington football team's defense against Seattle's offense is going to be crazy. All respect to Alex Smith for what he's battled and done everything, but I'm not sure if he's playing this week. And if Dwayne Haskins is playing, I think he's going to give that offense a little bit of a spark. He struggled a little bit when he came in, but there's no better team to play against right now defensively than Seattle. Seattle's really struggled all year on defense, and I think Haskins could maybe turn that offense and get that offense going a little bit more. There was without Antonio Gibson, which really hurts them, but the defense is scoring points. So when your defense is scoring points, your offense just has to do their job. And I think Haskins coming in, he threw the pick in the other game, which really, really hurt them, but they still pulled off the win because the defense made a stop. So I think the Washington football team, 1, I think they're definitely going to get in the playoffs, and 2, I think they could win a game or 2 inside of the playoffs.
Yeah, man, I think the Washington football team is really just a huge threat all around, and it's mainly because of that defense. They're moving the quarterbacks around again with Smith being out. And we all know Haskins struggled the first time around, but we also all know how gifted he is and how good he can be if he gets it all figured out. He's got the weapons he needs to do so around him. You know, he's got Terry McLaurin. Logan Thomas has become a really, solid tight end who has been as reliable as really anybody down the stretch of this season, short of probably Travis Kelce. But they took advantage of a struggling 49ers team, bro. And, they did everything they needed to do. Like you said, Chase Young is just unstoppable right now. Even besides the stats, he's just making plays that are affecting the game. And they've got, Montez Sweat, who's a solid pass rusher next to him. Even when they put Kerrigan in, he's not playing as much as, he did early on in his career and even the last couple of years. But he's still able to impact the game. They've got solid linebackers, and, their secondary is playing well when they need them to.
So for our next game, the Steelers-Bills, watching the first half of this game, it was like I almost fell asleep. Neither team could do anything on offense, but right before the half ended, the Bills' pick six was the game changer. It seemed like that really got the Bills going as a whole. And the player of this game by far to me is Stephon Diggs. Josh Allen has taken a step up this year, many people have said, but I think that's just putting Stephon Diggs on this team. He's one of the best route runners in the NFL. He went to Maryland, so that makes him 10 times better anyways. And he was making plays like all game in the second half. Like the one first down he had where he jumped up, bounced into two dudes, bounced it out, and still had the first down was just incredible. I just think he has been the thing of this offense that has changed it. And then you got Cole Beasley not being a number one anymore because Diggs is the number one, and that opens the game up for Beasley. So, like I said, I think the pick six before the end of the half really, really changes game, and the Steelers are not playing good when they want to. They started off the year 11-0, then lost to, as we said, the Washington football team who's played great, and then they lost to the Bills, who are playing really good. So the Steelers still are a good team in the NFL, but they're not the best, definitely, and the Bills are really, really playing good football right now.
Yeah, I think the Bills have, put together everything that they wanted to out of that roster. The Diggs trade looks great for them right now because he's playing so well. He took over that game, really, especially once the second half started. He was doing whatever he wanted to do versus really any of those DBs, and we all know how good the Steelers secondary has been. And then, on top of that, like you said, Josh Allen has been just ridiculously unstoppable. Each and every game, man, he's really figuring out more and more about what he's going to do. He's taking advantage of the run when he needs to, and he's taking advantage of Beasley playing really well this season, and then obviously Diggs. But the Steelers, they just don't look the same, particularly on offense. They just look flat. They don't really have too many dynamic guys. Claypool has kind of faded a little bit. We're not seeing a lot from him. Juju doesn't make the same type of plays that we're used to seeing from him either. And they have no running
TikTok dancer.
What's that?
I said Juju's a TikTok dancer.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it's just been tough for them. They just don't look like the same team. Big Ben doesn't look very comfortable. Deontay Johnson, who was so dynamic at times this year, has been, dropping the ball on screens. Like that's something that just can't happen. Those plays are something that they need when their offense isn't going, and they got to take advantage of it, but they just haven't been able to. So that's just, it's tough.
For our last game, the Ravens-Browns, this one was a crazy game to watch. Being a Ravens fan, there were so many times throughout this game I just didn't know what was going on. It seemed like when the Ravens took the 14-point lead in the second half, the game was over, and all of a sudden, the Ravens defense just completely fell apart. Lamar Jackson has cramps or whatever and goes into the locker room, gets an IV, and Trace McSorley's on the field. Made a huge throw to Willie Snead to keep the game alive, which ended up being one of the biggest plays in the game before Lamar came back in and threw the touchdown. But McSorley hurt his knee, and I read that Willie Snead was taking snaps, and Willie Snead was about to go in a quarterback, and Lamar Jackson, after the commercial, randomly appears on the sideline. He's running, comes on the field, and makes a touchdown pass. So this game as a whole was just insane. But the biggest thing for me this game was what the Browns showed. I've told you I did not think they were a good team all year. I didn't think their record showed for them. but they really look good on offense. I don't know if that was the Ravens defense just completely struggling or if that was the Browns offense being good, but the Browns really, really impressed me on Sunday. We'll get to see on Sunday night against the Giants what that really is. I think that'll be a good game as well. But I don't think anybody expected this kind of game. A lot of people probably expected a close game, but in the final 4 minutes of the game, nobody had any idea who was going to win. And then on top of everything, Justin Tucker comes in and nails a 55-yarder to win it. So I'm going to continue to say he's the greatest kicker of all time. That might just be some biasness, but I think he actually is. And the Ravens run game between J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, that run game is just different. I think it's similar to the Eagles where you're worrying about a quarterback running because Lamar can run. But the running game is still great. Even when it's not an option, they hand it off. Those guys bust tackles and get a lot of yards. And lastly, this is another bias thing, but I really don't care. People watching, I hope you know this. Lamar Jackson gets so much disrespect, and he came in, he missed the one throw to Andrews, which that's all you're going to see in the headlines. You're going to see that Lamar Jackson misses throws, but comes into the game after he just got an IV in his arm, throws a touchdown to Hollywood. Like, that's just a play that it's different. I don't think, when he rolled out, I thought for sure he was running it, and I thought he was going to pick up the first down. And instead, he throws it down the field to Hollywood, who had struggled all game. He was kind of having like a Deontay Johnson game. He was dropping some passes, and Hollywood sticks up, makes the catch, and gets a touchdown, which was the play of the game besides the kick at the end. So I think this game could show the Ravens a lot of stuff about their offense because it was really exciting offensively for the Ravens. But on defense, I think they need to turn some things around. But we'll see next week. Next week they play Jacksonville, which it's got to be a guaranteed win, and they need one or two teams to lose to get into the playoffs. So I think the Ravens will get into the playoffs, but they got to win out.
Yeah, man, I think, that was exactly what the Ravens needed. Literally, can you have a more clutch play in football than Lamar coming out of the locker room? He said he didn't have to go to the bathroom. He said it was cramped. So, you got to rock with him. So it is what it is. But it comes in, throws a laser, rolls out the pocket, makes the exact play they needed and really turned the game around for him. And then makes 3 straight, really just dots coming down the field late with no timeouts and like 42 seconds or something like that. And then I don't think anyone, expected anything but Justin Tucker to hit that field goal. He's 90-something%, man. He's as clutch can be in the game of football. I talk all the time, man. I understand kicking is part of the game, but I just don't like kickers because so often it's a problem. And Justin Tucker might be the anomaly to that, man. 90%. People aren't making 90% of the tackles, so he's one guy you can't look at and say anything about him because he's making it every time he needs to make it.
So now for our picks, last week we didn't have a pick 'em, but the week before we hadn't talked about yet. So 2 weeks ago, the Browns-Titans game, we both took the Titans. Rams-Cardinals, we both took the Cardinals. I think you took the Rams, I took the Cardinals. I'm not sure. I got to check that. But then it was the Bills, 49ers. We both took the Bills. The Patriots, Chargers, you beat me. I took the Chargers. You took the Patriots. And the Steelers, Washington football team was the game where, we both kind of said, this is the easiest pick of the week. Well, at least I said it. I know I did. Second straight week, I said this is the easiest pick of the week, and I wasn't going to be wrong, which I was. So I believe you're now winning 31-26 or 27. I got to check. But for this week, our first game is the Washington football team versus Seattle. I know earlier in the show I said Seattle. I thought Seattle had a good chance of winning this week, but I'm actually going to take the Washington football team in this pick. This is like the 4th time this year I've won against my early season Super Bowl team. But I just can't pick against Washington right now. They might let me down. And no matter what they do this week, they're still a great team, and I think they're going to make the playoffs. So I'm going to go with the Washington football team this week.
Yeah, man, I think, that's as tough of a pick to make just because of how good the Washington football team has played recently. But I can't go against the Seahawks just because they look like they're back on track. And, man, when they are on point, especially on offense, they're basically unstoppable. I think they'll get back to that. They need to be as they're heading into the playoffs, and it's going to be tough to see Washington lose that one. But, it's gonna be hard for their hopes, man, just because that division is so tight. But I think if they win one game out of these next three, they win the division. So just because the Giants lost that last game, so their fate is in their hands. And just because they lose this one definitely doesn't knock them out with the way that division has been. So they'll be fine and they'll get what they need done.
For the next game, the Eagles Cardinals. This one actually took me a while to really think about who I was going to take, but I'm going to take the Cardinals. Like I said earlier, I love what Hurts has done to the Eagles offense, and I think the entire team he provided a spark. But with that being said, I just think the Cardinals need this win more than the Eagles do. The Cardinals have more talent offensively than the Eagles do, and I think that'll be the difference. Like I said earlier, I think it will depend on whether DeAndre Hopkins gets the ball out or not, which I think he will. Darius Slay has struggled a little bit against great wide receivers this year, and I think we could continue to see that with DeAndre Hopkins. The Eagles could win this game, but I just really don't think that they'll take down the Cardinals in Arizona.
Yeah, man, I think the Cardinals are too much. I think they'll learn from the mistakes last week that the Saints made and not allow, that run game to get going, because that'll give Jalen Hurts confidence. That'll open up passing lanes that probably wouldn't be there otherwise. And, they'll take advantage, and Kyler Murray will do enough to help them win that one.
For our next game, the Browns-Giants, this is another game that took me forever to pick. I never, ever thought that I would be looking at a Giants game saying, I think the Giants will win, especially in a big game against the Browns, who have played really well. But I decided to take the Browns. The Giants, in their win over Seattle, really impressed me. But then they came to this week, and that loss this week was just too bad. I thought they would lose the Cardinals, but I thought they would at least compete, which they didn't. So I have to take the Browns this week, especially with what Baker did last week. I'm not a Baker fan. I never have been. But with what he did to the Ravens defense, I just don't think there's any chance that the Giants stop the Browns on defense, or the Browns on offense. I just think Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are the best two running backs in the NFL together. I don't think there's any other combination in the NFL like them. Kareem Hunt does so much in the passing game and the run game, and Nick Chubb is one of the best running backs in the run game. So I just think the Giants defense will not be able to stop the Browns, and I'm going to go with the Browns.
Yeah, man, I agree 100%. I think, the Giants' only hope is to force Baker to make some mistakes in the passing game. And right now, the strength of their team is still that running game with the two running backs and really getting Kareem Hunt involved in the passing game. That's what was really effective for them against the Ravens, and I think that'll continue in this next game. As far as the Giants offensively, man, I think they looked as bad as you could probably look against the Cardinals. And the Browns have, I'd say, a much better pass rush and really just whole front seven than they do. So I wouldn't expect I wouldn't even expect Myles Garrett to get 5 sacks again. I think, the Giants will learn and at least make someone double, help Andrew Thomas, or maybe even replace him. But they'll figure something out, and I think the Browns get that one done easy.
So for our second to last game, Chiefs Saints. I have to take the Chiefs. There's just no way I can't. They're the best team of football right now, but I really think this is going to be a great game. The Saints are usually good coming off of a loss, and I actually believe that they might bring Jameis Winston in and let him and show something different. The reason the Chiefs are so good, aside from the talent they have on offense and the fact they have the best quarterback in the league, is their offensive coordinator and his game plan. Every week he shows something different, which kills teams because they're not ready for it. They do the little tosses to the fullback, or they have Travis Kelce run across the field and throw it to him. So I think the Saints might try to get cute and put Jameis Winston in a scenario and try to get the offense going a little bit more. And I think they could bring in Jameis in. If he limits his interceptions, last year he was the yardage leader in the NFL, I believe. So I think the Chiefs will win this game, but I think it's going to be a really, really good game, and I think it still could go either way.
Yeah, man, I think it's going to be a really exciting game. I hope the Saints bounce back, and I think the Chiefs will get some things together too. I don't see them getting down early in this one. I think the Chiefs, the way their team is set up, I think they're well suited to play the Saints. It's just especially the way the Saints are right now, just overall. They're scrambling, still trying to find their identity. So they're going to be in a good position, man. I think the game's going to be really intense, back and forth. I hope they use Jameis some just because they have been struggling, and last week didn't look too hot for them. So they're going to figure something out, and then it'll be a competitive game, man. But I got the Chiefs winning for sure.
For our last game, the Patriots-Dolphins, earlier I just talked about how good I thought the Dolphins were and how I thought they were, one of the best teams in the AFC right now and the way they've been playing, and they're really, really well coached. But I'm going to go with the Patriots this week. I'm not sure what you're going to take, but I need to catch up in points. I need to catch up in points. And also the stat about Belichick against rookie quarterbacks, I think will play a part. The Patriots are done. There's no way they make the playoffs. So would it be smart for them to win? No, but I don't think Belichick will let his guys give up. And I think they're going to win against the Dolphins. But I really am not sure. I'm just taking this because I need to catch up.
Man, look, these games are always intense. I think, honestly, dating back to like when I was a little kid, Patriots-Dolphins games are always intense every year, no matter which team is good, which, I mean, it's always been the Patriots since we've been alive. But it's always competitive games. The Dolphins always find a way to win one of them, and especially with the way they're playing this year and the way the Patriots just don't look too hot this late in the season, I think the Dolphins steal it. What will be the caveat to that is if, the Dolphins are still missing all those guys, if they're still missing Devontae Parker, if Gesicki goes down, that'll certainly affect the outcome. So it'll be a tough contest. It always is. Like you said, Bill Belichick is good against rookie quarterbacks, and they're going to find something against Tua. It's going to be a different game than the first time. The first time around was literally all Cam Newton running the ball short yardage. But really the whole league has kind of figured out how to stop that. That just hasn't been very good for them the last, this probably 5, 6, 7 games of the season. So it'll be a good game. It always is. Patriots-Dolphins is always, a hot contest. This one's in Miami. Not a ton of fans, but there will be some there. But Miami needs this one to keep those playoff hopes alive, and I got them doing it. So
now we get into college football. Before we get into our picks, going on the Maryland game last week, you had a tweet that went pretty viral in the Maryland community, which I couldn't agree with more. After this Rutgers game, there was a million spots in this game where we could have won. And even at some points, I thought the game was over. But I saw people bashing Locksley, which is just incredible to me that people watch this game and would say that this game was every loss is partly on a coach, I guess, just because he's the coach of the team. But there's no way you could have watched this game and say Locksley didn't get the guys ready to play, or Locksley cost us this game. We had a million bad penalties. Like you said on Twitter, the drops, a lot of stuff just didn't really help. We forced 4 or 5 fumbles that didn't go our way. There, like I said, it was a ton of things that really didn't go our way. And on top of everything, we brought in a quarterback, Eric Najarian, I believe his name is, who came in at the beginning of the year, probably had no thought that he would play in a meaningful game, and came in and played really, really well for what he was brought into. He missed some throws. He didn't play great, but he made some big time throws that really could have won us the game. Jake Funk really has played great. On Twitter, you said, and Instagram, you said it's still unbelievable how he didn't get anything higher than 13 Big Ten. To me, every year I look at things. I know your senior year, I think you were first and second because there's a media and coaches. Didn't understand that. I actually tweeted that out that year and said it's incredible to me that I just think it's disrespectful to Maryland. It might be biased or whatever, but I just feel like they credit guys for other teams who really shouldn't be credited, and guys who are really good and have shown they're good don't get credited. But like I said, this loss to Maryland, it would have been great to see them win this game for me, but to me this means nothing. We had a third-string quarterback come in and play pretty well. We're still rebuilding. You want to win every game, but Maryland's defense looked great the whole first half. Tarheeb still is playing like one of the best cornerbacks in the country, and he's a freshman. So there's so much on this team that is young and still going to be here. And after we finish talking about this game, we're going to talk about some recruiting, which is going to have even bigger impact on this team. So, like we said, the players really made some guys made some mistakes, but overall, you cannot blame this game on Locksley.
The thing about it is, and it's the crazy part of that tweet, I sensed that coming early in the game. That tweet probably went out around midway through the second quarter. And it was probably after, I think specifically the play was when Dante dropped the wide open touchdown. I'm pretty sure Nigerian threw that one. It was like his second drive in the game. But it was a perfect play call. I don't know if the secondary blew it or what, but he was wide open in the end zone and he just dropped the ball. And those are the kind of plays that you can't have when you're a team who's already down so many players and you're still building your program and you're doing all these different things. Those are the plays that separate wins and losses. And it was that early in the game, and that made a difference because when the teams were so stagnant in the first half, right? The first half was what, 3-0?
Yeah.
That easily could have been 10-0. And then next thing you know, Rutgers with their offense struggling so bad and their defense hadn't stopped us in the first half. Again, we dropped the ball. Lance had a pick or maybe two, I think. And that separates the game. If we put that points on the board, that's 10-0. You put a team away early and they know that they have no chance of winning that game. There never is a second half where they score 21 points and all that kind of thing. That team is dead. And that's the difference between teams that know how to win or teams that are still building a program and still getting to that point. Dante is an incredible receiver, right? But, he makes some crazy athletic plays and does all these things that we see and we're like, dude, he can be first team all-conference, all-American caliber receiver. But he's just not there yet. And our team isn't there yet, but they will get there, for sure. And that was a good sign. The thing about it is Rutgers this year is the best they've been since they've been in the Big Ten. They got Greg Schiano back. They got a face to their program, and they have made so much progress. I think they won, 3 Big Ten games?
Yes.
I don't think they had won 3 in the last 5 years.
I'm not sure if they won 3 games, but yeah.
Yeah, so however many games they won, it's more than they won in a really long time. And these are conference games we're talking. So that alone makes it a difference. Like you said, even late in the game, we lost. There were 2 fumbles that Darrell forced, should have been picked up. We didn't get either one. You can't let an offensive lineman jump on a forced fumble. Just can't happen. And then we get the catch fumble. They overrule it. Game would have been dead at that point. And they overruled that. And when calls are that close, normally they just leave what the call was on the field. And honestly, that's what, obviously as a Maryland fan, that's what I would have hoped happened. But fans don't understand that a coach can't make a quarterback or throw a perfect pass. They can't make a receiver catch an open ball. Coach Locksley, more than likely, because he's an offensive guy, he probably called that play that got Dante open. Can't make him catch it. On the crackback blocks, guys are talking about Jay Sean being undisciplined and all this nonsense. Okay, here's the thing. The first one, it was slightly back towards the line of scrimmage, which you're not allowed to do anymore. And just Jay Sean has gotten a couple of those, I think, not even just this year, but I think he got one of those last year as well. It's an adjustment period. It's learning to play the game the new way that it's required to be played. So that's not I get it. You don't want him to make that play. You don't want that call because that affects the game. But that's not some terrible, undisciplined play that requires some insane level of coaching. It requires a correction to the way guys like Jay Sean have been playing the game his entire life. Physical and making crackback blocks. That only stopped 2 years ago, I'm pretty sure. And that one, it's such a thin line. The second one, if you go back and look at it, the second one, he wasn't going back toward his own line of scrimmage, which made it a legal block. But again, he laid the guy out, which is what makes it a penalty. The coaching point, if you want to make one, all he can do is just run over there and set a pick, which, again, me as a coach, I would have never taught that prior to this year. I would have told my guy slap through somebody like that because it's football. That's the game. But in 2020, that's how you need to play, where you need to set picks like it's basketball in a contact sport. And that's just not the norm. That doesn't equate to Coach Locksley being not good at disciplining his players and all that kind of nonsense. And we have a dirty team. Now, I will say, I don't know what number it was that twisted the guy's leg or whatever, and I'm not going to go into that. It didn't look good, man. And, I would hope that someone on that staff made a point of that and at least talked to him about it, because whether or not it was intentional, didn't look good, didn't look hot.
Before you keep going, Locksley, speaking of that, supposedly Locksley brought him in the office. Yeah, like you said, we don't want to get into it, but Locksley, he's got a first half suspension. So if Maryland guys want to kind of complain about that, Locksley's taking that into his own hands and is giving him suspension. So
exactly, and that's what you expect of a coach, because he probably, I highly doubt he saw that on the field when it happened, because most people didn't, and it looks terrible. So, like you said, he did exactly what needs to be done and discipline that player, and I bet you it won't happen again. And if it does happen to someone else again, it's going to be an even more harsh punishment, and that's what it should be. But other than that, the plays that cost us in that game had nothing to do with discipline. They were guys being in position to make plays and not making them. We saw Darrell have a breakout game, and he made plays that could have changed the game. And because, guys didn't take advantage and recover fumbles, it didn't. Guys dropped open touchdowns. No coach can do any of those things. Someone coached Darrell and got him in position to get off the edge and impact the game. And Darrell used his talent to do so. No coach can make a guy pick up fumbles. Like that, I don't know what people expect. I don't know what people think coaching does. Coaching puts you in a position to make a play. He can't make you do it. And the fact of the matter is, all those coaches had those kids prepare for that game. They even had their third string, fourth string going into the season before, Josh opted out. Walk on, redshirt freshman quarterback ready to play in that game and come in and make those plays. You can't ask for more than that as a coach, especially when you've had one guy playing essentially the entire year. And then literally the morning of, all those things change. You were also missing essentially our 3 out of our 4 top linebackers. Ace is hurt, Chance out for whatever reason, and so was Ruben. The fact that we're even in a game, if it's the old Rutgers, maybe you say, okay, you still got to win that game, but it's not. It's a much better, much more competitive Rutgers team. So you have to take all that into account. And at the end of the day, not everyone does that. People react on emotions more so than they react on what is actually happening. And it just is what it is, man. That's just the reality of where we're at today with social media and, knee-jerk reactions to everything that happens.
So before we get into the recruiting or whatever, I'm not going to repeat everything you just said because that's my exact thought. I agree with everything you just said. But on the Jayshon Jones blocks, the people on Twitter and on these apps, one, Jayshon Jones makes a difference on the field. So you putting him on the bench, what does that do? A. B, every one of these guys on Twitter or any one of these guys on 24/7, wherever it is that are critiquing it, I would love to see what they want to teach him when he's on the field to block. The football sport as a whole has changed, and every week you see guys get called. I understand that safety of football makes sense to me. Like the main gist of it makes sense to me, but the way they are enforcing it does not. Like you said, the first block was, but it wasn't like Jayshon Jones went out there and said, I'm going to hurt my team with this. I'm going to make this play about me. No, he was trying to help the team. He set a crackback block, made a mistake on the first one. And the second one, as you said, was a legal block. Jayshon Jones is on the field for a reason, and Locksley going and benching him would not do one thing. Locksley may be pulling him aside saying, hey, I don't even know what you want him to say to him, just because Jayshon Jones is playing hard football. Jayshon Jones probably has been taught his whole life blocks like that are good, and all of a sudden in college football now, if you grab somebody too hard, if you pull their flag off or you pull their towel off, you can get a 15-yard flag for it because that's how the refs feel. Over the years, we've seen horrible officiating, and I'm not even going to blame it just on the officiating. The rules, this Maryland game, as you said, it was against a good Rutgers team, so I'm not gonna just say blame the refs on this one. But I've watched games throughout this year. I can go back, Miami Clemson game. I understand you do not want guys hitting to the head, and If somebody blatantly goes out and takes a shoulder to someone's head, they should be eliminated because that's understandable. But if a guy is bending over or a guy is trying to make a tackle, and when he goes for the tackle, the dude's head's not there, and all of a sudden the dude's head moves and he hits him in the head, guys for that one should not be eliminated. This doesn't really relate to Jay Sean Jones, the crackbacks, but it's a similar rule. It's for safety. And guys, like I said, I just think they're trying to make the sport a little bit less of what it is. I just it just baffles me. And back to the main point, Jay Sean Jones, the first one was probably crackback block, but that's been in football his whole life and ever since I've watched it until the past few years. And the second one wasn't even the right call. And you have people online tweeting out and saying bench him or oh my God, just unbelievable. Without these blocks, we win the game. No, that maybe, but no, that's not what lost us this game. Those crackback blocks, they were maybe a small part of it, or everything in a football game leads to a win or a loss. So these people on this app saying this, it just frustrates me so much. And I don't understand how you sit there and watch a game. One, Jay Sean Jones is also young still. You know, he came off ACL injury, but like I said, he is our receiving core is great. They made some mistakes, and that's what it is. But it just baffles me the way these people think or even tweet. Like if you have it in your mind and you put it on Twitter, I don't know what they read and say, yeah, this is a good tweet. This should go out.
Yeah, man, it's tough. Like I said, people react emotionally more than anything, and I mean that just creates so many issues. And people also just have no idea what they're watching. They just see flags and they see things and then they come out with words that make no sense. Like that's like me going to a computer technician and oh, you're doing this wrong. I don't know what the heck I'm looking at. What right do I have to even say anything? Yeah, you're a fan and you can be upset that we lost. I'm mad too. But to get out there and just, say outlandish things and have no idea what you're talking about. Like I said, I saw it coming in the second quarter of the game before, the outcome was finished. So all that stuff doesn't surprise me in the least, man. Football has changed in so many ways just because of the blocking, the not being able to hit guys, and really just the sport isn't the same, man. Like I said, the way we were taught to play as kids, me specifically more so just because I'm going to speak on my own experience, was a completely different game in terms of level of physicality. Yeah, like I don't want to injure the guys that I'm playing against, but it's not a nice game. Football is not for people who want to be, friendly to each other. It's just not at the end of the day. And if you think it is, you might want to go, play Madden or something because that's the only place it's really friendly.
Yeah, I'm going to move on to the recruiting now, but like I said, I couldn't agree more with anything you tweeted and said throughout this whole episode. But so now for recruiting, we haven't really talked about recruiting this year, and I don't want to talk about it for too long because I don't want to take too much of your time. But Maryland, we're gonna get away from the negative stuff. Coach Locksley, like I don't want to keep bringing it back up, but the fans that said anything about Locksley on Saturday, I don't know if they pay attention to recruiting. I mean, I guess they do because they can critique everything else, but when it comes to recruiting, you don't hear much of them. Locksley has done so much for this program recruiting than anybody ever has. I think this is one of the highest since 24/7 Sports had made a recruiting a thing online. This is the highest class Maryland's ever had. Last year, he goes and shocks the world, bringing in Raheem Jarrett, who has been great this year. And it was expected. He was like the number 2 receiver in the country on 24/7 Sports. But this year, earlier today, it's signing day. He just brought in Brandon Jennings, who was once committed to Florida State, and then he had committed to Michigan. Taking a guy, he's a top, I think he's number 7 or 8 linebacker in the country, inside linebacker, but I think he can play outside. I think he does a little bit of everything. Bringing in a guy like that, you're taking him from Michigan. He is pulling him away from Michigan, and that's never anything Maryland fans have ever been able to have, where we're coming in, and this isn't a local guy. This is a kid who is coming from Miami or Florida, the Florida area. I'm not sure if it's exactly Miami, but they're bringing a guy in from Florida, which Maryland probably had absolutely no chance at 4 years ago or 3 years ago when Locksley wasn't here. So to me, that just shows Locksley's different to this program. And Locksley's also, everything in the media about Locksley has been good. Like, Locksley has not done one bad thing in the community. And I just think he's going to have such a different effect on Maryland overall, as he already has. And I haven't even talked about Terrence Lewis, the number one rated inside linebacker in the country, was formerly committed to Tennessee, decommitted from there, got a bunch of crystal balls to Auburn, and then Auburn fired their coach, and now he's dropped his top two, which is Maryland and Tennessee. Right now, I read that Maryland's trailing in that recruitment. Trey sent out a couple of tweets, so if he comes to Maryland better gift Trey something. But if Maryland, like I said, I heard they were trailing, but I heard it's like 45 to 55%. Nobody really knows anything yet. And I think he's going to make his decision on Friday and then come out on January 2nd and say where he's going. But to me, there is never any chance in the world before Locksley got here that Maryland brings in the number one inside linebacker in the country if he is not from the DMV area. That Maryland has never been able to get 5-star recruits straight out of high school. That just has not been a Maryland thing. Maryland football has improved from where they were over the past 10 years. At one point, they were really good early on, and then it's been a while since they've been great. And I think with Locksley, he is changing everything. Like I just said, Terrence Lewis, if he goes to Maryland, I will be beyond ecstatic. I won't know how to act. But if he does not go to Maryland, we were just in the top two for a kid who was the number one rated inside linebacker in the country from Florida. That's not ever something Maryland has been in. So I just think, back to what we were saying about Locksley as a coach, it just, his recruiting and all the other guys he's got, I didn't even mention. He's gotten a ton of good recruits this year that already have signed. And he's also changing. We've seen a lot of guys leave the DMV area. The DMV area has great football. But we've seen some guys commit to Tennessee or commit to LSU or go far away. And Locksley has said, okay, I'm not going to over-recruit that, and has brought kids in from Florida. So Locksley is just changing the recruiting game, and I really just love it about Locksley, and it's making me very excited.
Yeah, man, I think, off the field, he's done all good things, and on the field, we've seen progress. I think, people don't realize the offense has looked considerably better this year than it did last year in year two, with another new quarterback, a young kid who had never started before, which is all things that bode well for the future of the program as a whole, because you get your own guys in, you get young players, and you develop them, and then, in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you got a really strong team. That facility is going to be finished in the next year or so, and that's gonna be a game changer for us. And that's a tool that you have without having to say anything. You just say, hey, look, this is where you'll be every day. This is what we provide to you. And it'll be something that will really put us up there in the top echelon of schools. Like you said, a lot of Maryland guys have left, gone to Bama, gone to LSU, gone to whatever top program. He'll be able to keep more of those guys. This is 2 years in a row now that, he's been able to get the number one player in the state of Maryland. And then, he gets that top linebacker from Florida, and then potentially gets the number one linebacker in the whole country. Those are things that you need. And those are program shifters, and they shift the future of what we're trying to do and what Coach Locks is trying to do. People need to understand how much value is in that, along with the on-field production. Now, they get one more chance to play on the field, and maybe that'll be something that sets the difference for the couple recruits that aren't early signees, and he's able to swing that kid from South Florida and maybe a couple other guys. Because recruiting is not over. Today was a huge step, but there's some guys still to land.
So now, before we end this, for our picks, this week, Maryland plays Michigan State. I'm going to take Maryland. I believe Eric Najarian will start at quarterback. I'm not 100% sure. I still think Lance is good, and I think he's very good and can do things other guys can't. But I think the Terps, and as a fan, I liked what I saw out of Najarian, a guy who probably came into the day thinking maybe there was a chance he played, but came into the season thinking there was no chance and came in ready to go. Made some good throws. Some drops hurt him. It wasn't even his fault. Threw no interceptions, like I said, I think Maryland's offense is going to play great against Michigan State. And Michigan State also lost to Rutgers earlier this year, and Maryland had this Rutgers game won in a bunch of different ways. So I think Maryland's going to beat Michigan State, and I think they're going to beat them handily.
Yeah, man, I think the same thing. I think, I don't know if they'll be able to get any of those guys who missed last week back. But like you said, if Nigerian comes out there and shows that same competitive fire and, really that's it, just competes. That's what he showed last week is that, he was up for the challenge, something that few people ever would really be ready to do, to come in off the bench, being an afterthought guy in so many ways. And he showed that he was prepared. He showed command of the offense. And he competed, man. He was out there running. I don't know how good of an athlete, people thought he was before, but he was out there running for first downs, making throws outside the pocket, and commanding the offense, which is what you want out of any quarterback. I agree, man. Lance, once he gets some confidence under his belt, this has been a tough year because he was competing with Talia for the job, and obviously that didn't go his way for right now, but there's going to be a role for him. There's a reason he was a 4-star guy, and there's a reason that everyone's so excited that he got brought into the program. But he's going to make a difference somewhere, some way, and maybe it's on Saturday in a different role. They'll figure that out, and I definitely got them taking the win overall.
For our next game, Illinois versus Penn State. So for any Illinois fans who have watched this, I've taken Illinois once maybe, and I've been wrong all the times that I've taken other teams, but I'm going to take Illinois to beat Penn State this week. Really the main thing here, Penn State sucks. They're an embarrassment of a program. I hate that. Just kidding. Penn State, I just think this year Penn State has not been as good. We know Penn State will be back soon. They always recruit well. They usually get guys, and they'll be around like they usually are, probably 25 to top 25 to top 6, but they won't break the top 4, I don't think. So I think Penn State will be back in the next few years, but this year, this is not Penn State's year. It's a COVID year. A lot of teams have been hurt by it, and I think Penn State has as well. But I think Illinois has played well. They competed with Northwestern over the weekend. They lost, but it wasn't like Northwestern blew them out like they did against Maryland earlier in the year. For a little while, it was a close game, and I just think this is going to be a good matchup, but I think Illinois will win this game.
Yeah, man, I think Illinois definitely has a shot. I think what hurt them last week against Northwestern was a really poor run defense, and that's hurt them at times throughout, Coach Smith's tenure there. But, obviously, it'll be interesting to see who calls the plays on defense because I know, Lovey had taken over that role for them. Obviously, they won't have time to switch a defense or anything in 1 week. But they'll probably add some new wrinkles. And, being that they get another game to play this season that, obviously wasn't necessarily expected at the beginning. And, they've gone through all the things they've gone through, losing a coach and all that. They'll probably play more free as the players individually. They've got some seniors on that team who have played a lot of football. And have had gone through a lot overall, just in terms of losing coaches, all types of different drama in that program. So, I hope they play well, man. I think if anyone they're going to beat, it's probably going to be Penn State because Penn State's gone through their own drama. They've been trying to figure out their run game all year. Really, their offense as a whole, besides Dotson, hasn't looked too hot. So there's definitely potential there. The difference maker will probably be the Illinois offensive line, who's got a lot of starts. I know they lost Palczewski at one tackle, but everyone else is basically veterans up there versus 2 really good Penn State ends. That'll be, the difference in the game, who can win that matchup.
So now, before we wrap this up and finish our college football talk, no, I don't know. I don't remember what account it was. Somebody on Twitter had tweeted something out about at Illinois, Lovie Smith had banned scooters or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was just going to ask you a little bit about that and kind of what that was.
Yeah. So when I came to Illinois, I came in 2014. And when I came on my visit, man, you saw the wall of scooters. It was just a program thing, man. University of Illinois is a massive campus, ton of students, and scooters are a way to get around. Parking passes are like $500-$600 a semester. Same kind of thing that happens at Maryland, but no one wants to pay for that. And the scooters are relatively cheap, probably $800 to like $1,200 investment for something that'll get you everywhere you need to go. And the scooter pass is like $40 a year. So everyone rode those, and I had one myself. Probably saved me I don't know how many miles on my freaking feet walking around or paying meters and stuff. And when he got there, that was like literally in his first introductory conversation, he was like, "We're done with scooters," and everyone's like, "Wait, seriously? Like, is he for real?" And lo and behold, next couple of weeks, he started enforcing it, and scooters were a no-go. They disappeared quickly. I know some kids that put like a couple $1,000s into getting the better scooters that had all the crazy features, went fast. People were disappointed, man. So hopefully they'll make a return. There was literally like a section of the stadium right outside where guys would park 40, 50 scooters at a time, and it was a sight to see, man, because as soon as practice in, everyone just rolling out, and all you hear is just 50, 60 guys out of there on scooters. So it'll be interesting to see if they come back, man. That was part of Illinois, just football culture there.
That's pretty funny. But before we go, a little bit of college football this week. North Carolina beat Miami, which was, I think, the second biggest surprise of the week. Just the way they did it. North Carolina coming into this week, I don't think anybody would have expected to dominate Miami the way they did. They beat them 62-26, and I was expecting North Carolina's put up that many points a lot this year, so I was expecting a lot of points, but I was expecting it to be 60-50, like in the 60s to 50s. But Miami only put up 26 points, and this was a killer for their season. They had one loss coming into the game. That was the Clemson on a big game. So Derrick King struggled a bit, and I think that was the main difference in the game. UNC's running backs, Michael Carter ran for 308 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is just insane. But other than that game, the only other big game of the week to me was the LSU Florida game. Watching that game was pretty crazy. I just still cannot believe the way it finished. All those field goals late in the weather that it was. And then Cade York comes on and makes a 57-yard field goal. I think right now in the NFL, there's multiple teams that would put him on the roster as we speak. With the way kicks have been, I definitely think he would get on a roster right now. But for Florida, it killed their playoff hopes. They were already probably not going to get in, but there was still some hope. And I think this is what it does when you take the tight end Kyle Pitts off of the field. He was hurt. He didn't play. Kyle Trask still threw for 474 yards and 2 touchdowns, but the main weapon they had was Kadarius Toney, who's great. I think he's going to be a great NFL wide receiver. But other than that, they couldn't get anything going early in the game, and they put themselves behind. Battled back, took the lead, and ended up losing. So this game killed Florida. Florida was having a really good year, and I think that is surrounded by Kyle Pitts. But and lastly, Clemson Notre Dame is this week. We've both talked about Notre Dame multiple times on the show. If Notre Dame wins, I will come out in the next show and tell everybody I was wrong. But if I had $1 million to bet, I would bet all $1 million on Clemson this week. And I think Clemson's going to destroy them. If Clemson destroys Notre Dame, I believe that Notre Dame will get put out of the playoffs. If it's a close game, Notre Dame will still be in. I think the college football playoff committee is so non-understandable, so I really have no idea what will happen. But in my opinion, I think if Clemson kills Notre Dame does not get in, and if it's a close game, Notre Dame gets in. So this week with the championship week, I think we should see some exciting games, and yeah, I think there'll be some exciting college football games this week.
Yeah, man, there's going to be a lot to determine, man, because there's so many possible scenarios that could end up. Florida killed themselves, man. Dude tossing the shoe, that was the ultimate end. But I mean, there's no way in the world they can justify losing to this year's LSU team. They just weren't good at all, and Florida didn't look good either. I agree with you. Without Kyle Pitts, that offense didn't look the same, which is crazy because Trask was getting so much Heisman hype and all that kind of stuff for a good amount of time, and for good reason. He was putting up crazy stats, but without Pitts, man, they just didn't look good at all. and the fog there was kind of crazy. That's like a Florida folklore thing for some reason. Like once it gets like moderately cold, games like that randomly happen. But it looks crazy on TV, and LSU was able to sneak out of there with a sneaky win, honestly. And Florida killed their hopes, man. They did the same thing against Texas A&M early in the season in a game that they looked like they should have won handily. And at this point, they just deserve to be out of the playoff. I don't see them doing anything against Bama in the SEC championship to affect the rankings there. But I agree with you, man. That Clemson-Notre Dame game is huge because people are talking about if Clemson loses, they might stay in, which, I can't see a two-loss team this year staying in, even if it is Clemson. And even though Clemson, is one of the best 4 teams, you lose 2 games, you just don't deserve to be in. Same thing with Florida. But at the same time, that probably would put Texas A&M in. And then now you're watching Texas A&M play Bama again, which as good as Texas A&M is, they're going to lose to Bama again. So, it'll be an interesting weekend to see, man. I mean, there's a lot of interesting games to watch, and things could go a lot of different directions for sure.
So that is it for our episode. Thank you guys very much for watching. In the next few weeks, be on the lookout. I'm not sure if it's going to be this upcoming week or the week after, but we're definitely going to be bringing some guests on and some pretty interesting guests. But yeah, like I said, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, sir.